Welcome to the Learner's Mindset discussion. Today's discussion is going to focus on something that I've noticed on a regular basis that actually has been kind of irritating me. The notion of disruptive innovation and how it is misused. So I'm going to share a screen with you folks right now. And the reason this came about is that let me go to there we go. The reason that this came about is that in one of the many feeds that I monitor, I noticed this infographic that talked about documenting disruptive innovations. And it highlighted K-12 innovations, so to speak, or disruptive innovations in higher education, disruptive innovations. And it actually is not about disruptive innovations. It annoys me when people misconstrue what a disruptive innovation is. A disruptive innovation is really taking something new and different and implementing it in a new and different way. When we take a look at, in the K-12 environment, personalized learning goes mainstream, online testing takes off, digital content diversifies. They're focusing on the Go Open textbooks, which is just digital textbooks. This is a perpetuation of the information delivery model. There's nothing innovative here. Just because you're using technology to make it more efficient to regurgitate information and then force students to be tested on that regurgitation of information, you can't call that innovation. Even when they talk about the top 5 technology purchases, it's really all about a matter of getting the technology in the students' hands and making it more efficient to deliver the content and then measure it. This is not disruption.
You're right. I remember reading about this in Seymour Papert's book from the 1913s era in there. And they just called this computer-assisted instruction. So I don't see how what folks are calling documenting disruption, just a different way of doing things, is actually a disruptive innovation. It's more of just putting learners that need some, personal assistance in terms of a computer program onto, a software program and allowing that to be the personalized learning. And that's really not giving those learners any ounce or bit of choice or ownership or voice or any authentic learning opportunities. It's really just kind of applying a quick fix or a bolting on technique to what they're doing. And I don't see that this is disruptive in any way. This is my thinking on this. And 2, this is something that we've been doing since the early 1900s. Why are people still thinking of it this way? What do you think, Dr. H?
Oh, I'm so glad that you asked me that question. Why are we still here? And you had mentioned that this started in the 1900s. Well, it did. In the way that we have the industrial model of education that we have today really did start in the 1890s, 1880s with Thorndike and Winslow Taylor and the scientific management principle, those types of things. But this idea goes way back to the 17th century. The notion of the Nuremberg funnel, pouring information into the student's head. They were talking about that, 3 centuries ago. Back at the turn of the century, in France, a series of postcards were made where this idea of grinding up information in the form of a book was then distributed to the students' heads. We haven't moved beyond this type of thinking when we take a look at using a computer program to deliver the content. How is it any different than this? It really isn't any different. I think the challenge that we're facing is that the human being that is the most amazing learning entity on the face of the planet, and we learn in spite of what we do to students. And we can even learn in this environment where we deliver content. But you're right. True learning is really about creating a significant learning environment where you give students choice, ownership, and voice. Now, within that environment, you do have to have some rote memorization. You have to actually learn some concepts and some ideas, and the occasional testing to sort of show that there are certain skills and abilities is important. But if that is only done within the context of authentic learning, it then is much more effective. So this is not only not disruptive, it's not even new. It's simply an old model that we're simply making more efficient. It's a bad model that we're making more efficient. Online testing, 70% of districts are doing, I think, 70% of districts are doing online testing. The problem is the testing. The problem is that standardized notion of knowledge and information. It reminds me of some of the mistakes that we've been making with this notion that we've got the average man and the average student, and we've got these average norms. I know that average area in science kind of bothers you a little bit. Did you want to touch on that?
Yeah, I've read one of the most amazing books I've ever read. As a matter of fact, Dr. Hrabnik, I have it sitting right here. It's open, and it's open to my favorite quote. And actually, just to kind of share that with you, people are happiest when they have control over everything that's important to them. I think about authentic learning, and I think about all this testing one day, one shot one day. And folks look at this as the definition of whether students can actually succeed in college, and whether it's something that's going to define who they are as a person. But really, Todd Rose argues in his book that there's no such thing as average, and testing and pushing to that Thorndikean principles of standardization just pushes our learners even further in a box. I know this because I've been in public ed for 11 years, and I've seen it. Kids begin defining themselves by testing. And if online testing takes off 70%, we're actually doing the same thing we did with pencil and paper, just putting it onto a computer. That is, one, not diversifying anything, and there's nothing disruptive about that. And it also indicates that our kids are not getting those authentic learning opportunities that they so need to be successful. So, when I think of disruptive innovation, I'm thinking of something that just changes the landscape of the learning environment. And if you scroll down to higher ed, kind of move down in that way, I know, Dr. H, we work with a lot of students in digital learning and leading that come up with actual really, really good disruptive innovation plans. And they're looking to change that digital landscape. And they're not looking at the recipe and regurgitation of content and delivery. They're looking to change the way students are learning, perhaps using ePortfolio, blended learning, online learning. So to kind of go down that path, what do you think about that, Dr. H?
Well, I think you've touched on something that's really important. If I can sort of pick up on what you started with, the notion of what our students create with their innovation plans. When we look at those innovation plans, they will use technology, but technology is something that fades away into the background. And ePortfolio is a tool that students use to display their voice, to display what they've learned, to display what they've created. And so our students are building these innovations plans not based on the technology, but based on the learning, and giving students an opportunity to create something real. So technology serves its actual genuine purpose, and that is to be used to enhance the learning. So you can use technology to create things. You can use technology to find and to demonstrate and to share your voice. You can use technology in the process of developing, creating, designing, and it changes the whole environment. And it starts with that notion of giving the learner that choice to do something that is real, meaningful, and purposeful to them. That's personalized learning. So when I go back to this notion of personalized learning, no, personalized learning isn't testing a student with a piece of computer software to see if they can regurgitate content. No, personalized learning is giving that student a choice to take ownership of a real world project that can make a difference in their world, in their community, and then giving them the ability to find their voice and share that voice through that technology. That's personalized learning. And that is disruptive, not what we're seeing here.
I think that, you again touch on some important concepts in terms of authenticity and giving learners those opportunities for choice, ownership, and voice. And actually, we can if we were to recreate this infographic here, documenting disruptions, I would have authentic learning all over this that uses technology innovation as a catalyst for that type of change, but then again fades into the environment or the background. And you know, it's used just as if we brush our teeth in the morning. It's just something that we do. So in terms of time, we want to kind of wrap this up here and maybe summarize some of the key points, which I just did. But we need to get out of this thinking, I think, in public education that just because we change the way we do something or substitute it and use the computer to solve the problem and make that quick fix occur, and then we call that personalized learning, that's actually not disruptive innovation. Disruptive innovation really is changing the landscape using innovation that is authentic to you and your environment, and the learners can benefit from in a different way that it's been done before.
I agree. And just to wrap up from my perspective, I think I just want to touch on one more thing. Regurgitation of information, standardized learning, having a computer program that can verify whether or not a student can regurgitate information based on a standard is not innovative. It's something that we've been doing for the last 120, 130 years. Using computers to make it more efficient is not disruptive. Actually, I would argue it's almost harmful, and it's misusing technology. And I agree with you. Maybe we should redo those that infographic. It sure would look a lot different.
I think so.
Well, this brings our this session to an end, and I'm looking forward to chatting with you on the next big issue that's going to come across my email or your social media in the next day or two. Talk to you later.